Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So this is my 2-week review of Husqvarna Auto Mower. If you watch my other videos, I bought this mower 2 weeks ago and I installed like 1 month ago I installed it myself. At this point it has been running for 2 weeks. And then my first video I talked about my installation experience, and this one I want to talk about how do you deal with different boundaries and how that gonna affect the performance of your auto mower. So when you buy it, they will give you this kind of a gauge as a guidance to how do you install boundary wire. There are 3 kind of boundaries as they're defined. The first kind is what they call as a sidewalks. So here is typical example of sidewalks, meaning your boundary is flat with your grass. This is something that your mower can drive through your boundary, can drive over the boundary and cut over, so that you don't have to string trim anymore. And then in this kind of boundary, their guidance is you want it to be 4 inches away from the boundary so that the mower can drive through. So I want to show you how well it performs. So you can see this is the sidewalk or the bricks, and as you can see, the mower did drive through. The grass is not super high along here. I'm pretty happy about it, and looks like I do not really have to string trim around this edge. So this is what they mean by type 1 boundary. Now the second type of boundary is what they call as I would say soft boundary. This type of boundary is very hard to describe. This is something that you may have some area that you do not want your mower to go to, but then there is nothing rigid enough for the mower to bounce back. And in this situation, you want to make sure your boundary wire is 14 inches away from the boundary so that the mower will not go in there. So some example I have in here, let me show you, is so one example is here. This is a downsprout of my sump pump, and this area is actually lower than the ground, so I worry about my mower drive in here and stuck in this area. And I also worry about the mower cutting through this plastic pipe. And then that's why I created a boundary. I created an island around this area using the 14-inch guide to prevent my mower from getting in there. So it's working very well. I've never seen my mower stuck in here, but then certainly the downside is now I have this tall grass around it to deal with, and as you can see how tall it is compared to the rest of the grass. Now another example of this soft boundary is along this bush, or you may have a garden bed without any bricks, and this is a good example in here. So what I mean is under your bush or in your garden bed, you may have this loose ground or mulch in there, and this is the area you do not want your auto mower to drive into, because this is some loose dirt in there. The mower may stuck inside, but then there's nothing rigid enough for the mower to bounce back, and this is what they call as a soft edge, and this is why I use a 14-inch guidance. So as you can see along this area, it's actually working pretty well, even though I did a 14-inch guidance, and you see this is where my cable is. I don't see a lot of tall grass in there, and I don't think I need to string trim this area, so I would say I'm happy about this edge. Now the third type of boundary is what they call as hard boundary, or it's just walls like your house, your shed, or tree that anything may bounce off. And this is the situation. You need to use 16-inch guidance, meaning you need to lay your boundary wire 16-inch away from the obstacles, so that your automower will not bounce it off. Because say if you have a wall and then your boundary wire is too close to that boundary, then the automower is just gonna bounce it off. Then there's really no point of even have a boundary wire in there. Now, some example of this kind of boundary is, say, your house or your shed. And then I have a shed in my backyard, and this is where I use a 16-inch guidance to lay my boundary wire. And I use it because I do not want my automower to drive into my shed to break the siding. And as you can see, it's worked pretty well. I mean, I never seen my boundary wire, I've never seen my automower drive into the shed. So I would say it works pretty well. And the downside is you're gonna see these tall grass along the shed because it's not able to get too close to the shed in there, and I may have to string trim along this line, but then I want to protect the siding. And of course, if your shed is made from concrete or stone, like for example, if your shed has a stone foundation, like stone wall, and in that situation, I don't really think you need to create an island around your shed. You can probably just have your automower bounce it off. It's probably gonna work better than this, but then in this case, I want to protect my my siding. So these are 3 types of boundaries I mentioned. Another concept I want to mention is something they call the island. So if you watch their installation video, they talk about island a lot. They ask you to create an island around any obstacles in your yard, like trees and rocks. And I actually did not create a lot of island. For example, I have this big tree in my yard, and I did not create island along the tree because I want to save myself from some work, and also I want to save some boundary wires. It actually works pretty well. As you can see, all the grass along this tree, there's no tall grass at all. And then my automower literally just drive into and bounce off and cut everything around it. So I'm pretty happy about it. And certainly, if your tree has any exposed root, and that's a situation you want to create some boundary wire so that you do not have the blade trying to cut through the root and damaging your blade. Other than that, this is how well it works. Now, certainly that depends on what kind of tree you have. For example, I also have this small tree in my backyard, looks like a bush. And then this is a situation I did create an island around it because I don't think this tree is strong enough, and I don't want my automower just keep bouncing into it year after year. And also there's a mulch garden bed around it. I don't want my automower to get in there. So I create an island around it, and certainly there are some tall grass not being cut because these are like within the island. This is probably the area I need to string trim it, and because I create an island around it, try to protect this tree. Now the last type of boundary I want to mention is along the public road. If you read their manual, they actually tell you that if your boundary is facing a public road or street, you will want to build a fence along your yard on the boundary, at least 20 centimeter high fence, so that you prevent the mower from getting into the street at all. This is a kind of strange requirement. I watch a lot of installation videos, and even from Husqvarna. I've never seen anyone actually create a 20 centimeter fence, and I think that's gonna really look weird in my yard. So I did not do it, but I want to be very cautious along this side, so that's why I went very conservative along these boundaries. So from the end of the gravel, from the start of my grass, I went 16-inch away and then created my boundary wire here, just to be very conservative. Another reason I have to go conservative along this line is because of the gravel, because of street. The closer you get to the street, the drier the ground is, and then it's very hard to knock the plastic stakes in it. And I think along this line, I probably broke like almost 30 plastic stakes just because it's very dry. It's very hard to knock those stakes into the ground. So the further away you stay from the road, the softer the ground it is, and the easier it is to knock these stakes. So that's another reason I went super conservative. And then the result of that is I have these very tall grass. You can see how tall they are along my yard compared to the rest of it. So I may just have to string trim along this line. But then I guess I'm okay with it. I would rather to be safe than sorry on this side because I don't want my automower to wander into the street, or I don't want any car to kind of drift into my yard and hit my automower. So that's why I went super conservative. Alright, so that's all the boundary I want to talk about. Thank you for watching my video. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel. In my next video, I want to talk about how well the automower cuts everything.